hosting Mike Becker to present Social Security Planning, the second of 3 installments of our 2023 workshop series, which also includes core retirement decisions and long-term care planning. As we get started, just want to say that it's great to be with so many of you again. And a special thank you to all of our staff who make this possible, including Aaron and Caleb, who are at the back today, and as well as Christian, Zena, Jackie, Joshua, Nicole, and Beth. And I want to extend a special welcome to those of you who are seeing us for the first time, and give a big thank you to those who invited you. Today's presentation, Social Security Planning, is presented by Mike Becker with Legacy Financial Partners. As a financial advisor and general sales manager, Mike specializes in building and implementing financial plans for busy families and helping soon-to-be retirees with their retirement income plans. He strives to help his clients by building and implementing a financial plan that is specific to their needs. Mike entered the industry right out of college in 1995 with an internship. Now, 27 years into his career, he's accomplished a number of things. Mike is qualified for numerous company and industry awards, including the Gamma International Brian Early Frontline Excellence Award in 2013, and was often recognized as the top branch within his company. A recent article Mike wrote on Social Security planning was published in over 250 news platforms. In 2021, Mike started a family financial planning business called Legacy Financial Partners, LLC. Legacy Financial Partners work with Securities America, Futurity First Insurance Group, and Senior Market Sales to provide his clients financial solutions. Beyond work, Mike enjoys golf and Wisconsin Badger football. He also spends his free time with his wonderful wife, Anna, and their 3 children. As always, Alexander and Haberman does not practice in the specialties of its speakers, but welcomes them here to speak for the educational benefit of our clients, friends, and guests. Alexander and Haberman is a specialty firm focused on assisting with Medicare Advantage, supplements, and Part D plans, as well as individual and family health insurance on and off exchange, and group benefits including health, dental, vision, and disability. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen and send them to the host and panelists. We will respond to them at the end of the presentation. This will also allow anyone who needs to leave promptly to hear the entire presentation. So, to get us started with today's presentation, it is my honor to introduce Mike Becker.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany, for the warm introduction. I'm happy to be back, and it's great to see a lot of familiar names out there that have seen presentations in the past, and welcome to those that have seen us for the first time. So we've done a lot of workshops, and as Brittany said, this is the second in our installment of the spring series. We do have long-term care coming up in April, where we'll talk about long-term care and hybrids. But we've also talked about a lot of stuff, and interestingly, as we had some technical difficulties to start, we've had very few, knock on wood, yet we've done a couple dozen workshops here over the last few years. So many of the different topics, if you missed one of those, the YouTube channel for Alexander and Haberman has all of these housed. So make sure you go out there and you can get all of the Mike Becker you can handle. So before we get into it, we always start with our disclaimer that I am not affiliated with the federal government, IRS, Medicare, Medicaid, or any other governmental agency. I'm a local financial advisor that focuses on educating people with our experience and wisdom of what happens financially, so hopefully you can make better financial decisions. And as we do these workshops, we really work hard with 3 things in mind. First and foremost, we want these to be very education-based. So we walk out of here a little more competent and confident with the information that we glean. Number 2, we hope to motivate you to do something. It's great to spend an hour with us today, but going out and doing something with this information is very important. Number 3 is we want to really support that. So we've got quite a few different resources, complementary resources, to hopefully aid you in doing something with this information today. And we're going to cover a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about what Social Security is, where it fits in your retirement plan, understanding the benefits and claiming options, the impact of continuing to work, and then we'll slide a little bit of Medicare and some taxes into this conversation as well. So we got a lot to cover, and this is really a confusing time. There's all these numbers. When we think about retirement, age 65 is synonymous with retirement, yet we've got 70 and a half and 72 and 62, 65. We have all these numbers, and we have acronyms like RMD and FRA, and then we got Medicare and early Social Security. We have all of these things that create so much confusion when it comes to retirement. So it makes sense that we're sitting out there saying, what in the world are we doing? So hopefully we'll help navigate a lot of that today, not necessarily make you experts, but maybe highlight some of these different terms and some of these key ages. And I think when we really think about retirement planning, this pyramid is a good visual. And on the bottom of that pyramid is the social programs, being Medicare and Social Security. Really important if you have a solid foundation that everything else makes sense. So it's really important, in our opinion, that you make good decisions when it comes to Social Security and Medicare. And I believe this really the sentence really encapsulates what we'll go through today. What it says is, your choice of when and how to file benefits can have a significant impact on how much guaranteed lifelong income you and your spouse will receive throughout retirement. This is really what this conversation is ultimately about, because this is really a retirement conversation. In retirement, there's two outcomes. It's pretty straightforward. You either will outlive your money or your money will outlive you. Now, number one sounds terrible, right? Number two, not so bad. And we're going to really emphasize and talk about this number one of making sure that Social Security is a foundational piece when we go into retirement. And Social Security is such a very unique asset. This asset does essentially 6 things. And when we think about just about every kind of investment product out in the marketplace, it might do 2 of these things, maybe 3 of these things, but there's nothing else on the planet that does all 6 of these, which means, again, it's so important. If we start on the left side in the green, it talks about that lifelong income. So if we're 110 years old, we're still going to be receiving a paycheck from Social Security. And there's very few things that have guaranteed lifelong income these days. You have Social Security, you have pensions, and you have income annuities. That's it. Number 2, protected from market volatility. We've obviously, even COVID, we saw a little spat of market volatility. 2022 wasn't necessarily great in the market. We've seen the last couple weeks have been challenging as well. The nice thing about our Social Security payments, doesn't matter what's happened in the market, doesn't matter what's happening with interest rates. The paycheck that you will receive or the benefit you will receive will be the same as last month. So that paycheck or that benefit is protected from market volatility. Then we get to the cost of living or COLA increases, because some of us are going to have a 30-year retirement. And to see our benefits continue to increase, so our income continues to increase and we can have inflation-adjusted income. Number 4, where we'll spend quite a bit of time today, are the spousal benefits. Social Security is very generous when it comes to spousal benefits. Tax treatments, tons of confusion around how is my Social Security taxed, and we'll spend a little time talking about that. And then the government promised to back and make sure that payments are put into our accounts. So those are the 6 very unique aspects of the Social Security system. And I think to really appreciate Social Security, it's important to take a step back and look at the history of Social Security. And to really appreciate it, Social Security was signed into law as part of the New Deal back in 1935 by President Roosevelt. What was going on in this country? A lot of things in 1935, but specifically a lot of our elderly folks were living in poverty. Social Security was designed to help bring up some of those seniors and make sure that they have more of a livable retirement. So what was created was what was called a dedicated payroll tax. We all know that we have a portion of our money comes out of our paycheck each and every month to fund the Social Security system. Now, we probably have in jeopardy heard the question, who is the first person to receive a Social Security benefit? We probably all heard the name Ida Mae Fuller from Vermont. Well, she received her first benefit in 1940 after funding Social Security for 3 years. Well, her first benefit was just over $22. In today's dollars, that's about $400, but she only contributed for 3 years. What was interesting and fascinating was Ida Mae Fuller lived to the ripe old age of 100, died in 1975. So she pulled out over $22,000 out of the Social Security system, only contributing for 3 years. That's the power of what the Social Security system was ultimately about. I think what's also important is to talk about the structure of Social Security. What did it look like when it was first started? How many people were contributing to the Social Security system when it was started? 42 people were contributing for every one person that was pulling benefits out. What was the earliest age you could pull money out of the Social Security system? Age 65. Well, what was life expectancy back in 1940? Life expectancy was 62. We weren't even expecting people to get to a point where they could collect benefits. But if they did, and they started collecting benefits at age 65, how long on average were they collecting benefits? 2 years. Was the Social Security system set up to be funded very, very well when it was set up initially? The answer is absolutely yes. Well, what does the Social Security system look like today? Well, now there's over 50 million Americans that are receiving benefits. Now, when we think about that Social Security system, we talked about what it was. What does it look like today? There's about 3 people contributing for every one person pulling benefits out. And that number, by the end of the decade will be about 2.7 people contributing. What's the earliest age when you can elect benefits? Age 62. If you get to age 62, on average, how long are you pulling benefits out for? 23 years. Does the Social Security system look a little bit different today than it did when it was set up? Absolutely. And I love this cartoon because we have grandma and grandpa or mom and dad in the golf cart saying, haven't you young people found jobs? Young people are strapped with student loans and trying to buy a house and all the challenges young folks have. And then grandma's over there saying, hurry up, someone needs to keep funding Social Security and Medicare. And that's what a dedicated payroll tax does, is it's designed to keep funding so those people that walked before us can get their benefits. And I get this question all the time, is are benefits going to be there for me? Or maybe better said, it's more of a statement of Social Security benefits are not going to be there for me when I get to that age. Well, I think that's really interesting because we know that there's now a Social Security trustee report that comes out each year. And that Social Security trustee report said in 2030 that the Social Security system will run into problems in 2034. That's just over 10 years from now. And what will happen if Congress does nothing between now and 2034, what will have to happen is all the Social Security benefits will be cut to 77% of what they are today. That's a significant loss for the average consumer. And I think what's interesting in today's news, there is some talk about Social Security. And I think it was interesting when we saw Biden's budget come out, there was no talk at all about Social Security. Very telling, very depressing that he didn't bring that up. It's very much a political issue, and it needs to get off the political side, and there needs to be some resolution. Anytime somebody in Congress brings up Social Security, that's going to be a good thing. I'm going to be rooting for that person because we need to get Social Security out there, and we need to talk about it, and we need to fix it. We've heard that Social Security is broke. Well, there's several different dates that are out there because we heard over 10 years ago, well, the Social Security system's going broke. Well, that was because costs exceeded the income, excluding interest back in 2010. And a couple of years ago, the total costs exceeded total income. So now we're dipping into principal, or what should be principal. And we are projected right now that the Social Security fund will be depleted by 2034. The Social Security system needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed. And it's a really big deal because if you're on Social Security, you're going to be going on Social Security, how much of your income do you think Social Security accounts for? Maybe you're part of the blue. Maybe you're the green piece of the pie. Maybe the yellow piece of the pie. On average, the replaced income is about 40% of your replaced income comes in Social Security. About 50% of those in retirement, half of their Social Security is their income. And this is, I think, is alarming. 1 in 4 people in retirement, it's 90% of their income. Social Security is 90% of the income for 25% of the population. What that tells us all is we need to invest in those things on the right side. We need to do something. We need to put money into pensions or 401ks or company retirement plans or personal savings. Continue working, annuities, cash value life insurance, there's all these things. And people say, well, which one should I do? Anything. Anything will be good so you can supplement your Social Security, whether we're forced to take a discount or not. And where does it fit? It's a substantial asset. If we feel that our benefits are going to be $2,000 a month, well, that's $24,000 annually for me or my household. Well, what's that like up until the age 90? That's over $700,000. It's a significant amount of money that we get. And this is a copy of our Social Security timing report. We have Jim and Susie together here, and you can see at the bottom is their lifetime Social Security benefits projected. You can see together on the bottom right, 1.3 million. When we do Social Security timing reports for clients, routinely we see numbers in that 1.5, 2 million, and more of total lifetime benefits from Social Security. And we'll talk more about getting a Social Security timing report later. And that's really important because Social Security is the foundation of your retirement income plan. You can see an example of one of our income plans we do for our clients. And visually on the left side, you can see on the top of the bar chart represents the inflation-adjusted income you want to have. You want to make sure your income grows in retirement, right? Because you want to be continuing to buy more things. And we know in 20 years from now, you're going to need twice as much income to buy the same bill of goods. Or maybe a way to look at it, think about living on half the income you're getting today. Do you think that's going to be pleasant? Well, that's what happens if our income doesn't grow inflation adjusted. Back to the bar chart, the dark blue on the bottom represents guaranteed lifelong income, Social Security, pension, and annuities. And the light blue represents what I have to pull out from my savings, whether that's in the market or whatever I save in. So it's a nice visual to help us understand how much is guaranteed and how much is reliant on what it is that I've saved. Well, let's transition and talk about how those benefits are calculated. And there's two main factors that go into the calculation of my Social Security benefits. Number one, my earnings history, how much have I earned over my lifetime. Number two, the age and when I elect benefits. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about the election options. Well, to be eligible, we know we need 40 credits or about 10 years worth of work. And there's an acronym out there called the PIA, Primary Insurance Account. And essentially what that is like your baseline, what your Social Security is built off of. And what's built off of is the top 35 earnings years. Top 35 years. And I get this question all the time, probably coming up in our Q&A is, well, I'm thinking about retiring a little earlier. Will that significantly impact negatively my Social Security benefits? And for the most part, because if we're in the workforce for 50 years, well, again, it's scoring, Social Security scoring about 35 of those years. We can have 15 years that are not so awesome. So it's likely that not working or retiring a little early will not significantly impact Social Security benefits. But I think this is a really good thing to do. So one thing I'd encourage you to write down is pull up your Social Security statement. If you don't have an account online, go to ssa.gov and open an account. If you have one, go on and pull a statement on an annual basis. Usually at your birthday is a great time to do it. You can see what your estimated benefits are going to be. But the other point that I think is really important is your earnings record. There are 150 million accounts in the Social Security system. 150 million accounts. Is there a chance that there could be an error on one of our statements? There certainly could be. So it's a wise idea when we know that a significant portion of Social Security is based on your earnings. It's a good idea to make sure that your earnings are correct. So Social Security statement is one of the first things we want to do. So I like the picture. It says 67 is the new 65. Again, 65 is synonymous for a lot of us in retirement. It was probably for our parents or maybe our grandparents, right? 65, that's when I got Social Security, went on Medicare. Well, we know over 20 years ago this changed, right? People in my generation and up until age 1955, back to 1943, the retirement age for full retirement benefits, we call that FRA, is somewhere between 66 and 67 for most of us today. And you can see the chart. So you put in your birth year, it tells you when your baseline is. So think about this as your baseline. We're going to talk about electing early and late, but your FRA, full retirement age, think of that as your baseline. So if you're born 1956, your full retirement or FRA is 66 and 4 months. And again, if you're born after 1960, it's age 67. So let's go through a visual that I think really helps lock in what happens in electing our benefits. So in the yellow, we have our full retirement. So again, most of us on the call, it's somewhere between 66 and 67. Think about that, again, as the baseline. Well, we can elect early, and what's the earliest we can elect is age 62. Now, if we decide to elect early, that those benefits will be reduced. And this is a word you need to write down: permanently. You take benefits early, they're going to be reduced about 0.5% per month that you elect early. And we'll have some numbers here in just a few minutes. But that's a permanent reduction. Alternatively, if we delay past our full retirement, every year we delay, that benefit increases 8%. So if I'm 67, that's my FRA. Waiting till 70 means my benefits will be increased 24%. Now that is a monthly increase. So if you wait 6 months, 9 months, you will get about 2/3 of 1% increase each and every month. That too is permanent. So visually, you either elect early and you get a whole bunch of paychecks, or you delay, you get fewer checks, they just happen to be bigger. I think that's visually. Now here's some more math behind that. So we have age 66 in this example, our benefits are $2,400. You can see at age 62, electing early, those benefits are $1,800. So what's the difference? That's $600 per month. Times 12 months is $7,200 per year. We have an example of 38 years, 62 to 100, let's say. That's $273,000 less by electing age 62. And I think this is really important. And I say this a lot, that I think people make the decision around election of Social Security benefits very passively. Why do I say that? Because when we talk about those that elect early, I've seen numbers between 57% and 75% of those that elect benefits elect early. Now, there's absolutely reasons why it makes sense to elect early, but many of those people probably shouldn't. And I like this because it says don't automatically think that claiming benefits early is your best decision because mom did it, because cousin did it, because my boss did it. Their situations are completely different from yours. This is a very individual decision. So I would take out the noise of what everybody else did and make this decision for you. Because as we said, 8% increase past full retirement. And so this shows you the difference between age 62 and 70. It is a 75% increase in income permanently. So you can see on the right side on the bottom the difference between $3,100 at age 70 and $1,800 at 62. This is a really big deal. Now the next thing that most people ask is, well, what about the break-even point? How long do I have to live that it makes sense to delay? Or if I don't live very long, is it better to elect early? And I really think this comes down to missing the point of Social Security. Many people that elect early elect because they want to get theirs. They contributed to the system, They want to make sure they get benefits out. If they don't live a long, healthy life, they feel better knowing they got money out of the Social Security system. Is it about that? Or is guaranteed lifelong income about protecting against longevity risk? When that is, in many cases, the only asset that people have that's guaranteed for life, we might want to rethink that and think about Social Security more about protecting against longevity risk. And what is longevity? So we have this example, and when we do our Social Security timing reports, this is actually a picture that we get that sort of tells us when the break-even point is. And by and large, if you lived a general life expectancy in your early 80s, it really doesn't matter which option. But again, I think we're trying to cover against longevity risk. And you can see the examples. There's a lot of numbers here. I think that last box, female, age 65 today, let me back up a step. So there's two charts. If you've heard me talk about anything when it comes to retirement, we talk about life expectancy having two different numbers. We know that there's a general life expectancy table out there that's centered around somebody born today. And that includes accidents, infant mortality, all those type of things. Well, there's another life expectancy table that essentially says if you make it to 65, how long are you likely to make it? So it takes out accidents, infant mortality, a lot of those things. That's where this chart comes from. It says somebody who makes it to 65, there's a 1 in 4 chance that the females are going to make it to 96. Is 96 a big difference from 81 or 83? Would you want to cover against those 15 years of potential poverty? Or do you want to get your money because you may not make it to 81? It's really important to look at this potential risk. And on the far right side, it says if you have a husband and wife make it to 65, there's a 1 in 2 chance that one of you is going to make it to 93. Remember, that's a nearly 30-year retirement for a lot of people. We know when it comes to life expectancy, a lot of people say mom, cousin, kid, whomever lived to this age, therefore. We got to be a little careful on that because every day is a random outcome, right? I calculated it the other day. I had about 18,000 days of random outcomes. Good things can happen, bad things can happen, right? You never really know what's going to happen for tomorrow, but what you can do is protect against the future. And I think this is actually a really interesting table, is what's changed in life expectancy. Life expectancy back in 1935 was a touch over 62, or touch under 62, as we stated earlier. Now life expectancy, we know, is closer to 80, right? That's in the course of 75 years. My math is correct. Life expectancy has gone up 30%. What's going to be the next 75 years? Average age is going to be 100. We have to protect against longevity risk. Okay, let's talk about the next topic of continuing to work. There's a lot of folks out there that say, well, I don't really want to completely retire. I want to do something in my later years. So this is really important. So people that want to elect their benefits early, there's a thing out there called the earnings test. And Social Security says, okay, you can get your money early, but there's an earnings test where we might keep some of that money. And that earnings test essentially says if you make about a little bit over $21,000 in 2023, for every $2 over that $21,000, your Social Security will be reduced $1. So if you are going to continue to work, we'll talk about this in a minute, it's probably not a great idea to elect your benefits early. Now, the second bullet point says good news. If you wait till your FRA to collect benefits, you can continue working and your Social Security benefits will not be reduced. I believe Bill Gates is 66 this year, so he can go back in the workforce and not be concerned that his Social Security dollars are going to be reduced. That's an example of it's okay to elect benefits after your FRA and continue to work. And those benefits aren't gone, they're sort of rolled forward. So again, it's something that is very important to understand if you do decide to continue to work. So the question always comes up is what's the best age to claim? And I think this is really important. I'd encourage you to take notes here because we talk about these 7 factors that should impact your decision. It's not always the math of what we get from our Social Security timing reports. There's other things that are factored in. So we've already talked about the three primary factors: earnings history, top 35 years, election age, early, FRA, or delayed, and then life expectancy. Those are your three primary. We have four other really important decisions that should factor in. Before you elect benefits, you want to look through the lens. So the first one is, how is your current health? What things are you doctoring for? Maybe a way to also talk about that is, what things have you put into your body over those last 65 years? A lot of good things or not so good things. That might factor into your decision, which is also a life expectancy decision. Marital status. We'll touch on this in a few minutes. Social Security is very beneficial for a spouse. Number three, the desire to continue to work. We just spoke about that. And then lastly, have you done a good job savings? Do you have the flexibility to live on savings while you let your Social Security benefits continue to grow? So I would take a picture of this slide, or make sure you write all 7 of those down. So that's the lens you look through. You look through all 7 of those questions before you make your final decision. So let's then move on and go through a summary. And I like to jump to the FRA, the baseline. So as we talked about, your baseline benefits are based on that primary insurance account, the PIA. There's no earnings test. So again, that's your baseline. Well, if you want to elect early, you can get benefits as early as age 62, but benefits are reduced permanently. And again, you have the earnings test that's associated with electing early. If you decide to wait, every year you decide to wait, you get delayed income credits. Every month you decide to wait, you get delayed income credits, 2/3 of 1%, or about 8% a year. And we'll touch on the spousal benefits in a little bit. So that's the summary of what we've covered so far. Now, if we talk about single folks, these are a little easier decisions. Either elect now or you elect later. This is a little bit easier. But when we get into spousal benefits, this is a little more complicated. This is where strategy comes in. And Social Security looks at spouses in 3 different ways: a spousal benefit, a divorce benefit, and a widow or survivor benefit. So there's 3 different categories. So we'll go through each of these examples. So again, very beneficial for Social Security to spouses. That's why I think this cartoon is cute. It says friends with Social Security benefits. It's really a good deal to be married in many cases when it comes to the Social Security system. So let's talk about spousal and divorce. They work very similarly. And we're going to go through an example here in just a minute that will put some math behind all of these words. So we have the non-working spouse qualifies for 50% of the breadwinner, if I could use that term's, primary insurance amount. So that's a really good deal. So if a spouse did not have their 40 quarters, didn't have an earnings record, didn't make much money, they can still qualify for 50% of the breadwinner's benefits, as long as they've been married at least 1 year and are age 62. Remember, you always, well, let me back up. In order to collect the spousal benefits, the breadwinner needs to elect benefits. So the primary breadwinner needs to elect their benefits for the spouse to get the spousal benefits as well. So that's your spousal side. The divorce side works very similarly in the fact that the non-working spouse or lower income spouse still qualifies for 50% of the primary breadwinner's benefits, as long as the marriage lasted 10 years and that spouse is not currently married. So again, very similarly, 10 years, not remarried. Now, the ex-spouse, we talked earlier with the spousal, is the breadwinner needs to elect benefits. Well, that, after 2 years, that's not part of the equation for divorce. Maybe you aren't speaking to your ex-spouse, so that's out of the equation after 2 years. So again, they work very similarly. So let's go through an example. So we have Steve and Jackie. So we'll use the stereotypical. Steve was maybe the breadwinner. Jackie took care of the home and the kids. So Steve has his full benefits at $2,400 a month. Well, Jackie does not have her own earning record, so she qualifies under Steve's for 50% of Steve's benefits, which would be $1,200. $1,200 plus Steve's $2,400 is $3,600 per month, or about $43,000 per year in Social Security benefits. That's not a bad deal. So let's look at that in an example. So if we jump to the FRA again, so we already talked about Jackie's benefits are 50% of Steve's, or $1,200. Well, let's say Jackie wants to elect early. Well, when she elects early, she's going to be discounted permanently on her benefits. So if she takes it 3 years early, her benefit's not going to be 50%. Her benefit's now going to be 37.5%. Multiply that 37.5 times 2,400, Steve's benefits, and you'll see that's what Jackie's benefit is, which is $900. We might be looking at that saying, it's only $300, Mike. True, but $300 times 12 months is $3,600, times 30 years, it's over $100,000. That buys a lot of stuff. So that seems insignificant, but it can be significant over an extended period of time. And let's say Jackie wants to see her benefits grow and she wants to collect delayed income credits. Well, the spousal doesn't get delayed income credits, just the breadwinner. So there's no benefit for Jackie to delay past age 67. Now let's talk about survivor, or maybe widow's benefits is another way to say it. So the widow also qualifies for benefits as long as they were married at least 9 months and are over the age 60 and are currently unmarried. So that's the eligibility. Now, what does the benefit look like? The benefit looks like the widow qualifies for 100% of the breadwinner's benefits. And we'll go through the example with Steve and Jackie in just a little bit. However, those benefits are reduced if the benefits are elected early. So in a widow situation, they can actually elect at age 60 versus 62. But all of that means those benefits are going to be reduced. And there still is an earnings test out there. So if the widow decides to go back to work, Social Security benefits could be reduced if the widow ends up making over $21,000. So it's really important to understand that the earnings test is still applicable. So let's go through the example. So we have Steve and Jackie again, same numbers. Steve dies. Jackie's benefits step up from $1,200 to $2,400. Mechanically, that's what happens. So that's a good thing. However, what just happened? Jackie lost $1,200. It's about a third of her guaranteed lifelong income. That's a big deal. And I want to bring this up, and this is always a good place to talk about this. Many of you are sitting out there right now, and you have term insurance, and you're thinking about dropping that term insurance because the house is paid off, the kids are moved out of the house, whatever the reason was, maybe there's not quite the need. I would highly encourage you to consider talking to somebody before you drop that term insurance, because owning life insurance in retirement for Steve and Jackie makes a ton of sense, because Jackie will be reduced or be losing $1,200 per month, which again, $14,000 multiplied by a number of years, that's a significant amount of money that she won't have in retirement. So claiming consideration. So as a general rule, when it comes to earnings, if you're going to continue to work, it's probably not a good idea to collect early Social Security benefits. Number two, spousal elections are really important. So it's really important to tie these benefits together. And these benefits should be coordinated. And I can't tell you how many times I sat down with a husband and a wife, and these decisions are made in a silo. They're made separately. Wife says Jim made those decisions, and Jim says Susan's going to make her own decisions. It blows me away. Social Security decisions should be made in concert, should be made together. So if you're out there right now, please, please, please tie those Social Security decisions together. And then the last one simply says delaying benefits for the higher breadwinner often makes sense, because somebody then, when somebody passes away, that extra potentially 24% is carried forward for the rest of the survivor's benefits too. So really, really important. Okay, let's talk quickly about taxation of Social Security. So there's a lot of confusion around how Social Security gets taxed. I think people are often maybe surprised. They just don't really have a clue how Social Security is taxed. And this table that we're looking at was put in place about 30 years ago. And we've all been taught there's all kinds of different kinds of income. There's gross income, there's net income, there's modified adjusted gross income, there's adjusted gross income. Now we have to add to that list provisional income. Now, what is provisional income? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But if your provisional income fits into this chart, so if we can go into the middle column, it says for joint filers, husband and wife, if you make less than $32,000, your Social Security is tax-free. So there's some people out there where their Social Security is not taxed. If you're between $32,000 and $44,000 of provisional income, 50% of your Social Security is taxed, so there's 50%'s not, right? So that's not a bad deal. But if you make over $44,000, 85% of your Social Security benefits are subject to taxation. Still means 15%'s not taxed, so there's a small portion of all Social Security benefits that are not taxed. But that's a significant hole. If somebody's bringing in $30,000 of Social Security benefits, what's 85% of that? $24,000, $26,000, subject to tax, paying 30% tax. You could be giving back almost a third of your Social Security benefits, right? You worked all your life to get those Social Security benefits. Now you're giving a bunch back because your Social Security is taxed as well. So that's just the way it works. The provisional income, we'll talk about how it's calculated in a little bit, but I think people are, when they hear that, they kind of make this face, and they often say this is, let me get this straight, I have to pay taxes. Well, yeah, you do, because remember, we as a society, we're now $31.5 trillion in debt. Now we've been bailing out some banks here in the last couple of weeks. That number continues to climb. Our taxes have to pay for this massive, massive debt. So let's talk about provisional income. How is that calculated? Well, half of your Social Security is put into the equation, and then basically everything else. Your wages or income, pension income, investment income, interest, capital gains, all of that, qualified plan or IRA withdrawals, all of that goes into the equation, and any muni bond interest, that all goes into the equation. So just about everything else. Well, what doesn't go into that calculation? There's about four things. Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, health savings accounts, permanent life insurance, maybe a reverse mortgage. That's it. Everything else that we get as consumers goes into the category of provisional income calculation. Medicare, and I think this is really important to slide Medicare in here pretty quick too, because we talked about 65 is synonymous with retirement, and I think Medicare and Social Security were tied together years ago. That was all 65. We know that Social Security has now changed. We've established there's now new FRAs, 66 to 67. Medicare hasn't changed. Medicare is still 65. Keep those two things separate. Do your Social Security decisions, Medicare is 65. I do also want to remind you, when we looked at that pyramid, the base of that pyramid, the foundation was social insurance, Social Security, and Medicare. It's really important to get both of these decisions right. So if you're looking at Medicare, make sure you're talking to a professional like those at Alexander and Haberman that can coach you through these really important decisions. Don't make these decisions passively. Very, very important. If you're sitting out there and you have a government pension, you would know if you had one. The two terms are a GPO, government pension offset, or a WEP, windfall elimination provision. We're going to keep that out of today's conversation. If you do have one of those, take a picture of this. You can reach out to us independently, but there's not a lot of these out there these days. So the question then is, how do I file for benefits? You essentially have three options. Really today it's phone and online, not a lot of in-person visits these days. And I like this next slide because I think this really helps from a timeline perspective. So if you're thinking about electing here shortly, I'd take a picture of this too, because this kind of gives you a nice picture where it says you can apply up to 4 months before the month you pick. So this walks through a little example. It says, I want my first check in April. Well, what's the timing? Well, I should probably elect my benefits or apply. Maybe November's a little early. December, January, February is probably when I want to be filing for benefits, and picking March as my application date because my first benefit comes the month after. So then my benefits would come in April. So I think this timeline really does a nice job of letting us know when we should elect our benefits. So hopefully that's been helpful. So as we start to wrap things up, I want to remind everybody that we've had some great workshops. This is the second. We've got long-term care and hybrids coming up here April 18th. Please write that down. Look for your invitation from Alexander and Haberman. We'd love to have you. If you think somebody else could benefit from this, go ahead and send the invitation. We are happy to do this workshop for as many people that want it. As I said earlier, we want to provide education. These are education workshops. We want to hopefully motivate you to do something. And then thirdly, we want to provide resources to help you make good decisions. So we have a couple resources, recordings of the workshops, one of those resources. The second one is our complimentary custom Social Security timing report. These are 3 pages of, I believe, 14 that comes in our Social Security timing report. Helps you understand when's the optimal time to elect benefits. So we're happy to put together a report for you as well. And as we said, Social Security is part of an overall retirement income story. So maybe you've figured out Social Security, but you want to figure out your income story of where does Social Security fit and how do you fill in the light blue bars on the column. So we're happy to put together a complimentary income report as well. So we're finishing up here, if you want to use the chat feature, if you want any of these, you have a few ways that you can get it. You can go ahead and just chat any of this information in, a Social Security report or income report. You can simply put that into the chat. If you want the recording, you can simply type that in. I'm going to leave this up for about a minute, but go ahead and you can chat anything you would like, and then we will make sure that we follow up and get you that information. If you prefer not to chat, then feel free to just send an email directly to me. Same requests. We will follow up with the information we need to put together reports for you. So I'm just going to leave that up before we get into our concluding comments, and then once we have our concluding comments, we will then go to Q&A. So again, this is a way that you can get some of those complimentary resources. So in conclusion, there's a few things that I think we can take away from today. Social Security is the foundation of the pyramid, right? Don't make these decisions passively. Take the time to understand your options. Be informed. The fact that you're taking time to sit through this workshop today is awesome because you're learning about some of these things. Not going to be an expert, but you're taking the time to learn about these. We strongly recommend that you look through the 7 lenses or the 7 considerations when making your final decision. And then, as always, we're here as a resource. Not only do we send wonderful complimentary reports, we're here to answer questions, we're here to coach, guide. Don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. So as we conclude, I want to not only thank everybody for the support. We've had great support over the last few years of doing these workshops. I want to congratulate everybody for being on this call too. There's a lot of your peers that are out there that are putting their head in their sand, and they're not trying to get this information. They're going to make the wrong decisions, and the fact that you're taking time to learn today is good for you, is compliments to you. So we're excited for you, and hopefully you've been able to take 1 or 2 things from this presentation to put you in a better position financially. So I think we're going to wrap up here in just a second. We're going to flip it over to Q&A. So if there are some questions that are going through your head, now is a good time to go ahead and start chatting those questions in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for all that amazing information, and thank you for those of you who have joined us today, whether live or watching the recording, as Mike just said, to take the time to learn. So as we transition to Q&A, I just want to remind everyone that you can ask your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, or use the chat feature and send them to hosts and panelists. Thanks again. So glad to have you back. First question today. If a spouse is collecting half of a breadwinner's benefits, will her benefits be increased even further once she reaches her full retirement age and then files for her own benefits? In other words, can she collect both simultaneously?
There's a lot into that. So we're collecting, can you go back? We're collecting
half of the breadwinner's benefits currently.
We're doing spousal, okay.
Yep. Once reaches her full retirement age, files for her own benefits, can she also continue getting the spousal benefits?
One or the other. One or the other. But I think what's important about that, Brittany, is you can go back and forth on that. So you can elect spousal and then go to retirement, or vice versa. It also works the other way, that you can elect maybe lower retirement benefits and then collect the spousal when maybe your spouse retires.
Sounds good. My husband and I are getting ready to retire, near 66 in 2 months. I have an earnings record, but it's small. My retirement benefits would be less than my spousal benefits. My husband is waiting 3 years to collect benefits till age 70. It sounds like I need to wait to collect my spousal benefits till he elects.
That's a great question. I think I just answered that. I think this was
Yeah.
exactly what it was. So the strategy there is elect your retirement benefits, Brittany, okay? So even though they're lower, at least you've got some income coming in. Then when the breadwinner elects their benefits at age 70, this is a perfect strategy, because now he or she then is getting those delayed income credits. And then the spouse can switch to the spousal benefits if those are higher when the breadwinner elects.
Perfect.
So that's a great strategy. Both sides, that they can get some income coming in, but yet take advantage of the delayed income credits.
Okay. Can you tell me again what sources of income do not count toward my Social Security being taxed?
Sure. There's very few that are out there these days. So we have all of the Roth dollars. So you got a Roth IRA, Roth 401k, Roth conversion. So anything that's got Roth in it. Health savings accounts, cash value life insurance, and maybe reverse mortgage. That's it.
Okay. You talked a lot about life expectancy. Do you have a crystal ball, by the way? How much of your family history do you use when trying to map out life expectancy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do not have a crystal ball. I think that's a great question, and I really tried to emphasize that during the presentation, Brittany, that remember there's this, the purpose of this money, because it is a guaranteed lifelong income stream, is to protect against longevity risk. And we start taking a look at how long are people living these days. That's a scary thought, being 90 years old and broke. Mm-hmm. Let's try to protect against that risk, and versus I got to get something out of there. And I think that's the way people think about it, is they say, well, I'm not going to be there till 90. Well, what if you're wrong?
Sure.
So the fact maybe you don't get as much if you did tip over dead a little bit early, passed away a little early, maybe you didn't get as much because you waited a little bit. I'd rather protect on the longevity side.
Makes sense to me. So someone who's 62 and a half, they realize they should not take their benefits early, but has little savings because they're not physically able to work. What are your recommendations, suggestions?
Yeah, those are tough, Brittany, because everything's a little bit different. Every situation's different. We talked about those 7 really lenses to look through, and one of those was how good of a job have you done saving, right? Or what's that on the side? Some people just have to elect early. Mathematically, maybe that's not the optimal situation, but some people just have to, and that's okay.
Sounds good. So like a previous question, but kind of opposite, there's a 7-year age difference between my husband and me. Okay. He will collect at age 70. I will be only 63. I have a larger benefit if I collect for me than half of his. Could I collect spousal until my full benefit and then change to my own?
Yes.
And sounds like you probably recommend it.
Yes. Yes.
Sounds good.
Great question.
I'm a divorcee who was married for 15 years. If I elect benefits on his record, will his benefits be reduced? Will my election hurt him?
I hear that all the time. Sometimes they're like, I don't want to hurt him. Sometimes it's like, I want to hurt him. It doesn't. The spouse, the breadwinner, if we can keep using that term, doesn't even know. So there's no negative impacts to that breadwinner.
And are there cutoffs? Remind me, for the age that people can actually have a spousal benefit. In
the divorce situation, remember, if they're remarried under age 60 is one of those. So that remarried thing is where somebody might get cut off. I was talking to somebody the other day, and it was second marriage or second divorce, and so it's the second time around you get that benefit versus the first time around.
You don't get to pick which one had the better benefit.
No, you do not.
Okay. Are there cutoffs for having spousal benefits in general? Are they going to continue that? Do we think?
If and when Social Security changes, maybe, is that how we want to read into that question, Brittany? You know, I think the chances of spousal benefits being reduced is probably pretty limited. Everything that we're reading about these days is not about how do they cut, it's about how do they fund it. And so it's things, there's a lot of levers that they can pull to increase funding into the Social Security system. So I don't see Social Security saying, how do we cut here, how do we cut here, except for the fact maybe if you consider raising the level up or raising the age again for hopefully people younger than you and I, Brittany, that might be, if you can consider a cut, but not spousal. I wouldn't see that that's on the table.
Okay.
But let me maybe also add to that. Remember, if Congress does nothing, all of us will have to take a discount and only collect about 77%. That'll include spousal, widow, and retirement benefits. Great question.
It doesn't look like any other questions have come in. If you have any, feel free to chat them now and we'll definitely get them in. But otherwise, just thank you so much to everyone who attended today. Thank you again to Mike. You are such an amazing host and speaker. And we really enjoy having you. We're so happy to continue on. We have one more in the spring speaker series, and we look forward to seeing everyone back in April. As a reminder, Alexander and Haberman does not practice in the area of our speakers, and we bring them here for informational purposes for our clients, guests, and friends. Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.